Today, we look at Fidelity's 4 rules of retirement savings. In particular, the first one is called the 45% rule. It's a general rule of thumb, and this one may actually be pretty good. Vince is here to talk about that with me next. Hello, welcome back to Wealth Wednesday, our bi-weekly show now that helps you make better financial decisions. If you'd like to see more of what we produce, visit our YouTube channel. That's at Commonwealth Financial. You can also find us on the web at cfswb.com. I'd like to welcome my guest today. It's Vince McManus, a financial advisor from Parkersburg, West Virginia. I'm Neil Watson, a financial advisor here in Marietta, Ohio. Vince, more often than not, I find that I'm not a big fan of these generic guidelines and strategies. They oftentimes miss some critical information and aspects of people's lives. But the more I dig into this one, the more it actually makes sense. Can you describe what it is? And then we're going to show some math after that.
So Fidelity authored this one, and it starts with first looking at how much pre-retirement income the retiree is going to need to replace. They use a number of 70%, which I think is very reasonable. I would think 60 to 80% is kind of the ranges that I usually settle on, depending on the client and what their actual needs are. So that's right dab in the middle there. So I like that. Then Fidelity looks at the amount that you can expect to receive from Social Security, which is somewhere between 25 and 30%. And that's how you get to that 45% level they're referencing.
Right. So it's going to help to dig into the math so we can show this. We're going to put a graphic on your screen, and we're going to assume that you have a couple that earns the average annual salary for a family here in America. That number is $87,864. And then we have to adjust that a little bit. We take out Social Security and Medicare tax because that's not something you're going to pay in retirement. And this couple's also putting 15% into a 401k plan. Then we're also going to back out that health insurance cost that people have. And on average, that's about $4,300 per year. So the total, when we look at this, comes up to about 72.4% of their gross pay that they're going to need to replace in retirement. So that 70% number is not that far off. Vince, show us how the Social Security part of this works and what the calculations are going to be there.
Sure. So we're just taking two spouses. Spouse one earns about $63,000. So their estimated monthly Social Security benefit, $1,611, which annualizes $19,332. Spouse two, we had a $25,000, which equates to a monthly benefit of $972 and an annual benefit of $11,664. Totals for $30,966, which again is 35.3% of that $87,864 number. So we know that our average couple needs 72 of their income to maintain a lifestyle. And so we know that the Social Security benefits are going to replace roughly 35% of that, as the math shows. That means that generally the savings, when you get through that, is going to have to replace 37% of the income needs when they are retired.
Yeah. And on the surface, this looks like a pretty good guideline, and it's going to get you in the ballpark of helping you pinpoint what you need. And it's good for quick and easy math, which is sometimes what we just need to start thinking about the retirement planning conversation. And if you can do that, you're ahead of the game than a lot of people. Some people don't even think about it until the day of their last day of work. So that's a beneficial thing. But there are some shortcomings for this as well. And that's when you can kind of turn to the pros to help out. But these general rules, they do have their shortcomings, as I mentioned. And can you explain some of those?
Yeah, sure. I mean, again, a general rule is inherently designed to be very simplistic. That's the whole point of a general rule. So it may not reflect the person's actual situation. And that's where, the details really matter when you're trying to craft out a retirement plan and forecast the expenses for the next, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years. And again, your expenses are like anything else in life. They're probably not going to be linear, right? You may have a bunch of things that you want to cross off your bucket list. Well, it probably makes sense to do that in the first 5 or 10 years. You may find your dream home, or you may have kids and they have kids, and then they move to a different state. So there's a lot to be said about building in some flexibility into a plan, which again means it's not going to just all be about numbers, or as I'm kind of a fan of saying, a lot of this stuff, it's more of an art than a science, so to speak, because, things change. That's the hallmark of of life. And that's why it's so important to be meeting with a professional advisor at least annually as you go through life and have these situations that change, so that you can update your plan accordingly and make investment allocation changes or withdrawal changes as needed. And that's where, again, the devil is in the details, and they really start to matter. But again, you can't start to actually have a full plan unless you really start thinking about things at a basic level. A lot of times we find that kind of like there's an inertia problem of people get overwhelmed and there's so many choices. So it's like they just want to stick their head in the sand and not actually think about it and just hope for the best. Whereas sometimes, using a simple rule of thumb can help people to start to understand and think about these problems, and then maybe say, hey, you know what, I do want to talk to somebody. It's not as scary as I thought it would be. It's better to actually go in and do a real plan so we can help figure this thing out.
Yeah. And it also doesn't include some of the variables, like what if you retire early? You're going to need more from savings because you're going to get low Social Security. What if you delay retirement? Mm-hmm. You may need even less from your savings in that point. And if you're a higher earner, Social Security is going to replace less of your income than if you are on the lower end of that spectrum. So you're going to have, your savings has to do more heavy lifting that way as well. But it's good.
Talked about our people in Washington.
Yeah.
So
right. Yeah.
You always have that out there too.
Yeah. And then what happens when, Social Security runs into that deadline that they keep talking about in 2034? Nothing accounts for that, but it is good for breaking through that inertia that we often find. So Vince, thanks for joining me here today. If you'd like to learn more about us, please visit cfswv.com. We thank you for watching. And if you like this, hit that like and subscribe button. Thanks for watching. Have a great week.